wonderful letters from the Hajar School in Billerica, Massachusetts. Of course, I'm in Massachusetts right now. And I grew up in a town called Chelmsford, which is right next door to Billerica. So, of course, we used to say Billerica back when we were growing up there. And so I've got some wonderful questions from Ms. MacNeil's class. Gosh, there are just so many of them. Wow, look at all these wonderful questions. Let's start at the top. Why are your books based on art? Wow. Well, probably because I'm an artist and I love to draw, and I love to take my imagination and have a record of it, right? So I can remember what I think. That's the most amazing thing about drawing and writing, that it can record your amazing thoughts, right? Everyone has an amazing brain, and we have amazing ideas. And sometimes when we have an idea, it floats away and we forget. But if you write or draw your idea, you will never forget. Why do you enjoy drawing? That question comes from Brielle in Ms. MacNeil's class. Brielle, why do I enjoy drawing? I enjoy drawing because it's so much fun. It's so much fun. I get surprised when I see a blank sheet of paper, which, by the way, I get excited. It's like seeing a swimming pool. What do you want to do when you see a swimming pool? Right? You want to jump in? And have you ever noticed that a swimming pool is about the same shape, right, as a piece of paper? So I like to dive in. And when I dive in, I use my imagination and I move my pen around, and I get surprised. I get surprised by where my pen goes. And sometimes my drawings make me laugh. Sometimes my drawings make me think. It's really, really fun. So I highly recommend that everybody makes at least one drawing every day. That's what the promise I made to myself. Okay, another question. How do you draw? I'll tell you my secret of how to draw. You take something that makes a mark. You take a piece of paper, and then you put the marker on the page, and then you move your hand around. And that is how you draw. What do you think that is? Well, if we use our imagination, it could be it looks like a nest in a tree, yeah? And then from there, I could add a bird. There we go, there's a bird. And I'm going to, instead of it being in a tree, I'm using my imagination. And that nest is actually some pretty wild hair, right? Have you ever seen people's hair? Sometimes it's like, it just looks like a bird would love to sit in that and maybe make a little nest, a little home in it. So that is how I draw. And I use, this is called a China marker. And it's kind of like a crayon and some charcoal combined. I use watercolors, I use pen and ink, I use pencils, and anything I can get my hands on to write, including the back of an envelope. Have you ever heard of that? Thinking on the backs of an envelope, that any scrap of paper will do. So art supplies don't have to be expensive. It could be a piece of cardboard. There are people throwing out lots of cardboard every day, and you can actually chop them up, turn them into your art supplies. What inspires you to draw children's books? Well, you could call them children's books, but I call them picture books because I love to draw and I like to use a few words to help explain what's going on in the drawing. And together they turn into picture books. And I like to say picture book rather than children's book because picture books are for all ages. And I write my books for all ages. You could be 130, and I think that you would enjoy my book and maybe you'd learn something and think differently after reading it. And you could also be a little baby and you could have someone read that book to you. So my books are for all ages. Is the dot based on a true story? Yes. Based on a true-ish story. I say true-ish because it wasn't exactly that happened, but there was a little girl who said she couldn't draw in my art class, and I helped her to relax, and I ended up writing the dot to help her relax and see that her marks were beautiful. Okay, I have another question here. How did I get started? How did I get started making picture books? I picked up my pen and I started writing and I started drawing. And it really helped that I had a daughter who was 3 years old and she wanted stories from me. Not only having me read stories, but to invent a story out of my imagination. And so that I didn't forget the ideas that I came up with, I started to write them down and I would draw pictures too. And Sarah really, really loved those books. And I thought if Sarah loved these books, maybe other kids would love these books and maybe adults would love these books. So I kept going and I'm never going to stop. What is my favorite book that I've written? Well, that's a tough one. There are so many, and I've also done some collaborations with some really remarkable people. My favorite book. Today, I'm going to say Ish, which is the sequel to The Dot, because I think it's a really, really handy idea that we don't all have to be perfect, right? That perfect-ish is pretty good. It doesn't have to be exactly a tiger if you're trying to draw a tiger. Tiger-ish is actually more interesting to me. So I hope that book helps you relax and let your creativity flow. How do I feel about seeing my books in a bookstore? Valeria asked that question. Valeria, great question. How do I feel about seeing my books in a bookstore? Do you know what makes me very happy? To see my book on a bookshelf with my name on the cover. It makes me very, very happy and proud. And it makes me excited to think, I wonder who will buy that book? Or if it's a book in the library, who will take it home? And will they read it once or twice? Will they share it with their family? That book goes on a journey, and that makes me very, very happy to know that my book will go on this remarkable, wonderful journey. Well, Ms. MacNeil and all of your fabulous students, thank you so much for your wonderful questions. And hopefully I can come visit the Hajar School in Billerica, Mass. At some point, and we can connect the dots in person.